That particular day, it was pretty windy, and I could actually hear some branches falling on the roof. And we heard just an explosion. It just rocked the whole house.
It was mid-November 2017. John and Isela Shaw's family had just finished an early dinner. Afterward, their 14-year-old daughter, Caitlin, went to her room to take a nap. Without warning, a 100-foot-tall tree crashed into her bedroom. A neighbor came over to help as they searched frantically for Caitlin.
All I saw was this tree completely filling the room, and the roof had, of course, been crushed underneath it, and I can see just the sky behind, and it was raining, and it was still windy.
I ran into the room and just tried to see if I can see her. I'm calling her name out, and she's not responding to us.
The tree was massive and too heavy to move. Finally, John spotted one of her legs.
Finally found her, but we couldn't see her head. And so I'm pulling her leg, she's not coming. I start pulling her arm, she's not coming. I'm pulling so hard I feel like I can pull her arm right out of her socket. And I'm pulling with everything I got. And she's not moving, and her head is still pinched and just under the tree.
It was scary because, the trees, the branches everywhere. I thought she's gone, dead.
All of a sudden, while I'm pulling her arm, she's sliding between my hands. I can't explain it, but all of a sudden she started shimmying out from under the tree. And it was just like, almost like an aha moment. It was God. It was just intervening.
Caitlin was unresponsive. They called 911 and took her to the living room where John began to pray.
I just laid my hand on her head and said, Father, in the name of Jesus, I cast out the spirit of injury and death. And I began to say, Jesus, breathe into her. And right at that moment, all of a sudden, her chest began to rise and she started shaking. Her body started almost like she was having a seizure. And she was just gasping for breath. And up to that moment, she wasn't moving, she wasn't breathing. Nothing was going on, just laying there.
EMTs arrived at the scene and Caitlin was transported to the hospital. John and Isela followed close behind.
They had her on life support. And I began to pray again. I began to put my hand on her, praying for a miracle of God.
The Shaws started calling their friends and family, and soon they had a prayer chain for Caitlin that stretched from there in Washington to Tennessee, all the way to Guam.
I would figure there are probably hundreds, maybe even a few thousand people that were praying for my daughter.
I say, God, give her another chance, please.
After 18 hours, the doctors removed life support to see if Caitlin could breathe on her own.
This is the moment of truth. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. They're gonna either pull her off and she's gonna somehow be hanging on still, or we're gonna end up letting her go. I was calling to God, and all of a sudden they said, come back in. She's stabilized to a point. She's breathing on her own.
It looks like she's fighting for her life. She's fighting on her own.
About 18 hours after they pulled the life support, she's semi-stabilized, she's breathing on her own, and about 6 hours later, this is like slightly less than 24 hours, she actually stood up and was walking down the hall with the support of the hospital staff.
Caitlin's nurse shared her story with other members of the medical team.
He says, I know I'm not supposed to necessarily share names and all that, but there's a young girl named Caitlin, and I'm taking care of her. And we have a walking miracle in our hospital here today.
Caitlin recovered quickly, and within days of her traumatic experience, was released from the hospital.
Here it was, Friday, and Sunday we're in church. She's in church with us. It was almost surreal, and there was such an excitement in the congregation.
2 weeks after Caitlin's miracle, the Shaw family celebrated Thanksgiving with hearts full of gratitude.
I knew a lot of people were praying for me, and I felt very thankful for them.
I would really thank God for bringing us all back together, for Thanksgiving. That's really special for us.
There was just such a sense of gratitude and thankfulness, that opportunity just to have a continuation of her being with us. And God never left us or forsook us in the midst of all that trial.
This experience has changed Caitlin's view of God.
I started to actually believe in him, because he saved my life, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here.
God is real. God answered my prayers. He never leave you or forsake you.
There's still that soft spot in our heart of just thankfulness and gratitude to God, because in the midst of just devastation and broken pieces, and he just sustained us. And we're just so thankful that he's carried us through.